Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. You might not have heard the name Shasu before, but their story is something everyone should know. What if I told you that there was a people, predating the formation of Israel, who worshipped the Almighty God even before Abraham? Yes, the Shasu were an ancient and enigmatic Semitic people who revered the same God who would later be known as the God of Israel. In this video, we're going to unravel the mysteries behind this nearly forgotten civilization, one that could completely change our understanding of the origins of the worship of Yahweh. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single detail of this astonishing revelation. The mystery of the worship of Yahweh before Israel. At first glance, the idea of a people who worship the Almighty God before Israel might seem strange, almost unsettling. After all, we're used to associating the worship of the God of Abraham directly with the history of Israel. But the truth is, the Bible itself offers us clues about the existence of Semitic groups who, even before Israel's formation, revered the Almighty God. Many of these groups, in fact, had a direct connection to Abraham. In this context, there is a biblical figure who plays a crucial role, though he is often overlooked, Jethro, also known as Ruel. He was a priest of the Most High God, and his importance in the Old Testament, especially in relation to the story of Moses, is immense. Despite his quiet presence in the Scriptures, Jethro's influence is fundamental, particularly in the Pentateuch, and more specifically in the book of Exodus. To know Jethro's story is to understand a vital part of the biblical narrative that is often forgotten but sheds light on profound aspects of the worship of the God of Israel even before Israel existed. When Moses flees Egypt, he heads directly to the land of Midian, where he meets a priest, a man of Semitic origin, descended from two peoples, the Kenites and the Midianites. Moses ends up taking refuge in this priest's house, who was devoted to the God of Abraham but belonged to the Kenites and Midianites. For 40 years, Moses remains in Midian, learning from Jethro, also known as Ruel, and deepening his understanding of the traditions and stories of the Semitic peoples, from whom he himself was descended. He becomes familiar not only with the traditions of Abraham's people but also with those of other Semitic peoples. Moses marries Zipporah, one of Jethro's daughters, and thus, through this marriage and his years in Midian, he connects even more deeply with his Semitic roots. Jethro is just one biblical example that proves the existence of Semitic peoples who worship the same God as Abraham. And it is in this context that the enigmatic Shasu emerge, one of the Semitic peoples who, like the Kenites and Midianites, served the God of Abraham even before the formation of Israel. The Shasu, in ancient Egyptian, Sas, were Semitic-speaking pastoral nomads who inhabited the southern Levant from the late Bronze Age to the early Iron Age, or during Egypt's Third Intermediate period. These tent dwellers, organized into clans governed by tribal chiefs, were viewed by the ancient Egyptians as bandits, active from the Jezreel Valley to Ashkelon, extending across Transjordan, the Sinai, and even into Saudi Arabia. The Egyptians, who harbored a deep dislike for the Hyksos, often saw the Shasu as mere wrongdoers. Exploring the etymology of the name Shasu, it is believed to originate from the Egyptian term sas, which originally meant those who move on foot. Other scholars, such as Levy, Adams, and Muniz, suggest connections with the Egyptian word ss, meaning to wander, or with the Semitic triliteral root sasas, found in Hebrew, meaning to plunder, or to steal. Therefore, Shasu was an Egyptian designation for certain groups and subgroups, possibly associated with the Hyksos people. As for the Shasu's homeland, while it seems their origin was in Transjordan, they were also recorded in regions such as Canaan, Syria, Egypt, Sinai, and Saudi Arabia. The history of the Shasu is rich and complex, with their earliest known mention appearing in a 16th century BCE list identifying peoples from the Transjordan region. Exploring the trajectory of the Shasu takes us back to the Late Bronze Age, a period when these Semitic nomads stood out not only for their lifestyle but also for their impact on the history of ancient Near Eastern civilizations. The first recorded mention of the Shasu is found in the biographical inscription of Admiral Amos, discovered in El Kab. In this inscription, Amos reports that he took Shasu prisoners while serving Pharaoh Akhenaten Thutmose II. The Shasu were captured during a punitive expedition to the north. Scholar Givian, 1971, argues that the only event capable of explaining the emergence of the Shasu at this time was the expulsion of the Hyksos around 1550 BCE. In the 39th year of Thutmose III's reign, during his 14th military campaign, the pharaoh encountered the Shasu before reaching Rechenu, indicating that the Shasu were present in southern Canaan, specifically in the Negev region, as recorded in Thutmose III's list of enemies. The name Shasu also appears in a list of Egypt's enemies inscribed on the bases of the columns of the Salab temple, built by Amenhotep III. An intriguing detail discovered in this temple is the reference to a location called Srr, in the land of the Shasu, Tshswsr, which many believe is related to or near Petra in Jordan. This location is curious because it alludes to the land of Seir, of the Edomites, revealing a phonetic similarity between Srr and Seir. In the 13th century BCE, inscriptions on columns commissioned by Seti I or Ramses II in Amara, Nubia, mention 6 distinct groups of Shasu, those of Srr, of RBN, of SMT, of WRBR, of YHW, and of PYSPS. These references demonstrate the extent and diversity of the Shasu groups, who were recognized as significant adversaries of Egypt in various regions. These records not only underline the presence of the Shasu in different areas but also suggest their importance in the political and military landscape of the ancient Near East. The association of one of the Shasu groups with YHW is particularly noteworthy, suggesting a possible connection with the worship of Yahweh. This raises intriguing questions about the origins and religious influences of this people. The Shasu continue to dominate the mountainous region of Canaan, the West Bank, and areas of Transjordan, consolidating their power to the point of significantly disrupting northern Egypt's trade routes for a considerable period. This growing threat compelled Ramses II and his son Merneptah to conduct intense punitive campaigns against them. Following the Egyptian withdrawal, the Canaanite city-states were left vulnerable, at the mercy of the Shasu and the Abiru, who were feared as powerful enemies. Documents from the Egyptian 18th dynasty confirm the growing influence of the Shasu in Canaan, evidenced by the large number of prisoners captured. In Amenhotep II's records, nearly half of the listed prisoners were from Kor or Karu, and later by the designation of the Shasu as one of Egypt's greatest enemies, alongside powers like Babylon and Tehanu, Libya. During the reign of Amenhotep III, the origin of the Shasu was identified as being close to the biblical city of Dothan, a place where Bedouins used to bring their flocks. Interestingly, the story of Joseph in the Hebrew Bible also mentions nomads bringing their animals to drink water at a spring near Dothan, suggesting a possible historical or cultural connection between these accounts. In the campaign of Pharaoh Seti I, which is widely recognized due to the victory stele found at Tel Megiddo and Beth Shean, the Shasu inhabited a fertile, mountainous region between Sila and Pa-Canaan, possibly near the city of Gaza. The relief depicting the campaign describes the Shasu as a rebellious and chaotic people, whose tribal leaders gathered in the hills of Kor, Karu, to plan revolts. They are portrayed as contemptuous of their neighbors and disregarding the laws of the Egyptian palace. During this campaign, Seti I also confronted the Abiru in the vicinity of Megiddo, highlighting the persistent instability in conflict in the region. This period of turmoil and Shasu dominance marks a fascinating and complex chapter in the history of the ancient Near East, where power dynamics, culture, and religion were in constant flux. Now, when we come to the Shasu of YHW, we find a fascinating and surprising detail. The name of the biblical god, Yahweh, is directly associated with this particular group of Shasu, who were already worshipping the Almighty God even before the formation of the people of Israel. It is important to remember that, in addition to Jethro, there were other Semites who served God long before the story of Moses. A notable example is Job, from the book of Job, who, according to most sources, was an Edomite, a descendant of Abraham, and also a worshipper of God. But returning to the Shasu of YHW, two Egyptian texts, one from the period of Amenhotep III, 14th century BC, and another from the time of Ramesses II, 13th century BC, mention the land of the Shasu of YHW. According to researcher Michael Astur, this hieroglyphic translation corresponds strikingly to the Hebrew tetragrammaton YHWH, or Yahweh, and predates the earliest known occurrence of this divine name, in the Mesha stele, by more than 500 years. K. van der Toorn concludes that, as early as the 14th century BCE, long before the worship of Yahweh reached Israel, groups of Edomites, Midianites, and Kenites already worshipped Yahweh as their God. This fact opens a new perspective on the origins and spread of Yahweh worship, suggesting that it was already present in religious traditions prior to the formation of Israel, and that the Shasu of Yahweh played a crucial role in this still largely unknown history. It is very important to highlight that all of this only reinforces what the biblical texts themselves state categorically: Midianite and Edomite groups were already serving the God of Israel long before the official formation of the people of Israel. This is fascinating, especially when we remember that Job, described as an Edomite, and Jethro, a Midianite, both believed in and served the Almighty God. It is clear that both Edomites and Midianites also practiced paganism and polytheism, but the worship of the God of Abraham was preserved within these nations. Jethro, for example, was an influential priest in Midian, which suggests that he taught many others to follow the Almighty God. This leads us to believe that there were a considerable number of worshippers of Yahweh among the Midianites. Furthermore, some experts believe that the Israelites may have shared a common origin with the Shasu, considering that their brother Edomites and Midianites were included in this nomenclature or designation for certain Semitic groups. It is worth noting that, from the Egyptian perspective, Semites in general were known as Hyksos, or Hika Keswet in ancient Egyptian. Now, I want to hear from you. Leave your thoughts in the comments and let me know, did you know about the Shasu, this ancient people or confederation of Semitic peoples who worship the Almighty God? May God bless you all, and see you soon.